Welcome to Ziffity Quick Chat.
The customer of the B2B company is demanding e-commerce. So I don't believe this is, the death of a salesperson. But, ultimately it's about the leadership making difficult change and facing uncertainty. If you're uncomfortable, that's a good thing. It's now a mandate. It's no longer an option to be in e-commerce if you're in B2B. There is so much ROI in e-commerce for B2B companies, and it comes from many places.
Hello everyone, I'm Ram from Ziffity Digital. Welcome to our podcast channel, Ziffity Quick Chat. The topic for today is going to be how B2B companies can become future ready. When we talk about becoming future ready, the first thing that comes to our mind is digital transformation, and e-commerce is at the heart of any digital transformation initiative. However, e-commerce is considered to be a heavy lifting for most of the companies, irrespective of their size or maturity. You'll be having a lot of pressing questions to be answered from a business point of view, starting from why e-commerce in the first place. That's the reason why we have an expert on board today in our podcast channel, and he's none other than Brian Beck. Brian Beck is one of the most trusted e-commerce advisors in the US and European markets. He has helped a lot of leading B2B firms take the right business decisions at the right time and achieve exponential growth in their respective niche market segments. Today, he'll be sharing a lot of facts and real-life e-commerce success stories, which he has garnered in his experience of over 27 years in the B2B e-commerce industry.
It's great to be here, and thanks for having me. And gosh, 27 years, you make me sound so old.
That's a lot of wisdom there, Brian.
I guess so. Almost 3 decades. Yeah, it's funny when I add up I started my career in the 1990s, and you're right. It has been over 25 years when we add in all of that experience. So I'm thrilled to be here and to talk to you and your audience about B2B e-commerce and what's driving it, all around the world. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for us. Yeah. So let's get started with the questions. And the first question is that why B2B companies should invest in e-commerce? I mean, what could be the reasons that can push them or encourage them to invest in e-commerce?
Well, yeah, no, it's a great question, Raman. It gets back to why, I even got into this field, right? And just a little bit of my background for the benefit of your audience. Of my 27 years in my professional career, more than 20 of that was as an operator. So I was the person in charge of running e-commerce, and a lot of my, big companies, but also, more emerging and smaller companies. And a lot of my experience was in the B2C side, right? So it was serving consumers, in the U.S. market, but also internationally, and bringing best practices and e-commerce at a time when it was new, right? It was the new thing in the 1990s and 2000s, first 2 decades. E-commerce was a new thing for consumers. And about 7 years ago, I left the operating side of the business and got into working with large companies on the B2B side. And what's so amazing about B2B, Ram, is that the opportunity is huge when a company embraces e-commerce for their B2B customers. The transformation that occur, the return on investment that can occur is enormous. And I like to joke, I got into B2B because it makes me feel young. It's the B2B industry is so far behind in many ways where B2C is. So in the consumer side of things, we were chasing after getting, 3 or 5 or 10% growth per year on our e-commerce business after having done it for 10 or 15 years. In the B2B side, when I talk about the transformation that can occur, you've got businesses that are, doubling the size of their business in less than 5 years by, small companies in some cases, by using e-commerce. And so when you think about what are the reasons that B2B companies, should invest in e-commerce, well, first and foremost, it is the customer. The customer of the B2B company is demanding e-commerce and digital channels. They demand now that the B2B company removes friction from the buying cycle, from the research cycle, et cetera, when they want to buy product. You know, the staggering fact is that in just 2 years, in 2025, 75% of B2B buyers will be millennials, right? Those born between 1980 and 2000. And those folks are digital natives. In fact, they use Amazon, for example, here in the US, they use Amazon for almost 95% of their online purchases, at least in some parts. And they make more purchases online than they make offline, 60% online versus 40% offline. So if you think about, you know, these buyers and all these buyers moving into procurement roles at B2B companies, they have the same expectations. They don't want to pick up a phone. They don't want to say they don't even know what a fax machine is. I mean, what is a fax machine? You know, they don't want to send an email with their order. They want to be able to go online, find what they want immediately from their suppliers, buy it, and then basically get out of the way, right? Let them, if they know what they want, let them transact via e-commerce. And so it's an imperative for B2B companies, particularly as we went through COVID, right? Where, you know, if you weren't prepared through COVID as a supplier, you lost market share in many cases, right? So it's now a mandate. It's no longer an option to be in e-commerce if you're in B2B. You have to get there, whether you're a supplier, a manufacturer, or a distributor. So, you know, I think, you know, that's why the first chapter of my book, when I can talk a little bit about the book too, but is called, you know, the time is now. It's your time is now. You have to take action if you're a B2B company. So it's an imperative, I think.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point, Brian. E-commerce is not an option anymore. It's an imperative, and because like the consumers are expecting more digital experiences and do-it-yourself experiences, and your competitors are already there, and you'll have to catch up in order to compete with them or outrun your competition that's already getting ahead. And COVID has also accelerated the digital buying, and consumers have become more accustomed to digital buying ways. So, despite the healthy market scenario and the B2B e-commerce market scenarios, I mean, growth trajectory of the B2B e-commerce market is also looking great. So, despite this healthy change in the market segment, why are most of the B2B companies still only depending on their traditional buying and selling ways?